So again, we're here to talk about supporting teen resilience and what adults need to know. So again, welcome. Our head office is located on sacred land that has been the site of human activity for over 15,000 years. This land is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Chippewa, and the Wendat, and is now home to many diverse peoples. We acknowledge that the City of Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. We acknowledge these nations and any other recorded or unrecorded First Peoples who cared for the land as the past, present, and future caretakers of this land named Takaranto, where the trees meet the water or the gathering place. As settlers, we entered into an agreement to share this land equitably. As settlers, this recognition of the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities. We're grateful for the opportunity to work with communities and on this territory. So I would like to introduce you all to Dr. Chantal Regis. She's a registered psychotherapist with a PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Guelph. Her area of practice include children and adolescents, as she provides therapeutic and assessment services in several private practice clinics in the Greater Toronto Area. Dr. Regis previously worked as the staff psychologist at the Peterborough Regional Health Services and Ontario Shore Centre for Mental Health Services, adolescent outpatient clinics. Her therapeutic orientation is integrative, including cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, psychodynamic informed play therapy, and dialectical behavioral therapy modalities. Her research interests are in the area of women's health, including disordered eating and premenstrual syndrome. Here's Dr. Michael Saxton. He is a clinical psychologist working in Children's Mental Health, Ontario. Currently, Michael is a staff psychologist at Kinark Child and Family Services, working with children and adolescents through the Community Mental Health Program. In addition, he is an associate at Belfond Psychology Services, which is a private practice in the Greater Toronto Area that provides both therapeutic and assessment services. Prior to his current positions, he gained experience providing psychological services for youth and families in contact with the justice system, as well as in hospital and school settings. Therapeutically, Michael draws heavily from cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy. Dr. Saxton also maintains a research practice on the impact that domestic violence has on families in the community response to violence. I'd like to introduce you to some of the youth voices we've had as part of this webinar. So to the far left, we have Jada. Jada is currently in grade 11, living in Ontario. She is super interested in how the brain works and plans to take an undergrad in psychology after high school. Her most important goal through this is to make positive impact in society and things like this webinar. In the middle, we have Daniela. She prefers to go by Dami. She's so excited to be part of this group. She's a 17-year-old from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. She's also a track and field and is a high performance athlete. She'll be going to the University of Pennsylvania in the coming September, and she's pursuing a major in neuroscience with a concentration in philosophy and a minor in entrepreneurship. Psychology, mental wellness, and youth empowerment advocacy are so important to her alongside racial and gender equality. She has a strong belief in pursuing any dreams, both big and small, and has a heart of determination and perseverance. Once again, she's also very glad to be part of this webinar and our Youth Advisory Council. And last but definitely not least, we have Joelle. She's a grade 9 student and junior ski coach. She's very passionate about visual arts, music, and languages. She loves plants and the environment, and she is excited to take this step to learn more and share more information about youth wellness. So before I turn it over to Dr. Regis, I would like to let you know that we will be having Q&A at the end of this session. So please put any questions you have in the Q&A function rather than the chat function so we can separate those out. And we look forward to continuing this webinar with you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I can see in the chat that we have folks joining us from coast to coast. I think I saw someone mention St. John's, Newfoundland, special place in my heart. I did my internship there, so thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Pamela and Strong Mind, Strong Kids for having me. And we've got our first slide up here that shows that the pandemic was a very challenging time for youth in Canada. Stress is defined as an emotional response to a time-limited situation or stressor. This study was conducted in 2020, so I imagine then they weren't thinking the pandemic would go on until 2022, but they surveyed youth across the country and found that youth reported, 1 in 3 youth reported that they had experienced stress during the pandemic. This was more than any other age group that was sampled, and indicating how much stress they were experiencing. If you go to the next slide for me, Pamela. Thankfully, a large portion of that youth also reported that they had engaged in at least one type of resilience building activity. So 85% of youth said that they journaled or spoke to a friend, did some breathing, activities like that, things that promoted resilience. We know that also too, this pandemic thing that happened in the last few years was happening to all of us at the same time. But for youth, it was happening to them at a time in their development when their brains are developing in a way that's very critical to how they manage stress. Thanks to the invention of MRI machines, we know that adolescent brains are structured differently than adult brains. Adolescents feel their emotions more intensely than we do as adults. Their emotions are triggered more easily for them than for us, and it takes them longer to calm down or return to baseline than adults. Pamela has graciously agreed to join me in doing a little activity here to demonstrate this. Before we get started, I'm just going to encourage all of you watching right now to take 10 seconds and just jot down or think about the name of your high school crush. Think back, high school is farther away for some of us than others, but thinking back to high school, who was that person that when they walked down the hall really caused butterflies? And just jot that person's name down for me. Okay. So Pamela, I'm wondering, do you remember that high school person for you? We can take the slide off if you like.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, you remember that person? Okay. Can you connect with that feeling that you had seeing that individual walk down the hallway at school?
Yeah, when you're young, you get really nervous and excited, and
Yeah.
palms start getting a little sweaty.
Palms got a little sweaty. Do you remember where else you felt that in your body? Maybe the butterflies in the stomach or the lump in the throat.
Or like the fast heart rate, all those fun things.
Yeah, he's looking at me, he's looking at me, he's looking at me, that feeling. Yeah, for sure. Ever have that feeling now at the grocery store? You see a handsome gentleman across the way picking apples. Ever get that sweaty palm feeling?
Absolutely not.
Ever heading up to the cashier and think, oh, he's looking at me, he's looking at me?
No.
No, absolutely not. You have a fully developed brain now. So we know that teens feel their emotions more intensely. And if you can connect to that high school feeling, you can actually really remember what it was like, that you get this rush of sensations in your body, thoughts about how you're going to be perceived by others, perhaps even feeling those butterflies the whole way walking to your next class in a way that we as adults don't experience anymore when we're shopping at the grocery store, for sure. Thank you so much for helping me with that, Pamela.
Thank you.
I think that for those of us who work in the helping professions, us caring adults who want to be there for children, it's helpful to have this information about the adolescent brain because it helps us to validate the experience of adolescence. Validation is the principle of helping someone to label or name their emotional experience and acknowledging that that experience makes sense given everything we know about the situation. Teens need validation from adults, and I think that we often forget the part about how their brains are wired and that they are experiencing their emotions more intensely, their emotions are triggered more easily, and it takes them a longer time to calm down than for those of us with fully developed brains. Things that might not seem like a really big deal to adults can be very upsetting and emotionally triggering to a teen. So I want us to keep that in mind as we now hear from the teens.
I feel like one of the big things that has been hard, even from elementary, is dealing with the need for academic validation in the way that lots of the times our worth is kind of determined in, say, what university we're going to, what grades we get, things such like that. And it's hard to be able to move past that, to be able to be like, this is the person I am, and be able to accept that I'm trying my best type of thing.
So that makes sense, and I think part of it is trying to think through, you know, the fact that you're still trying to develop an identity, right? And that's part of just the development for yourself and being a lifelong learner around that. So I think, you know, thinking through around many of the pieces that are part of who you are and who you are as a person is really kind of critical, but also recognizing that you're more than just kind of the academics first and foremost, and you're still going to continue to develop regardless of that. Now it's also hard because of the pressures, and I'd be curious for you, Jada, how do you kind of balance those pressures as well?
Yeah, well, for me, I definitely understand what Dami's saying. Like, I find in school, like, it's so institutionalized that it feels like our grades are determining where we're going and what we're doing, what programs we can get into. And like, it almost feels like when we're talking about course selections and stuff, it feels like university and college is our only option, like, period. You don't have a life unless you seek post-secondary, right? And it's really difficult. For me, I feel like there's not really enough like structure with adults in my life personally that you know, I really know how to manage those pressures. I've had to like I've seeked help on my own, and so I do like my own things. Like, I practice a lot of mindfulness and, you know, a lot of self-care, those kind of things. Sort of like I explore myself a lot, and like, you know, being a teenager, nobody really knows who they are, but I try to explore that. But it just, in regards to school and academics, it feels like that's like so defining at this age.
Yeah, and I think that it's reiterated a lot, and like exactly what Jada said, what your grades are or what your grades are determine, yeah, what programs you're going to get into, what schools you get into determine what your grades are, and it's hard to be able to not put your identity in that, even in pursuing a degree, like I'm in grade 12 and I'm choosing soon what my major will be. There's that pressure to choose something that's logical or something that's going to be more recognized in the society, more respected, the same way as a student that might be getting higher grades, you're more respected in the school. And I think that's something that we can't pretend doesn't happen. But I do agree with also being able to be mindful of yourself and have self-awareness, and always having that constant seek of finding out who you are so that your identity isn't placed in these numbers that are determined inevitably by like somebody else as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an openness to that fact. And I think, you know, you're right. Where you guys are at this stage in your life, the school pressures and the desire to do well is at the forefront. But it's an openness towards, okay, I'm going to continue to learn. I'm going to continue to take opportunities to develop and continue to be open to experiences. That is a really good shift to have in mind. Easier said than done a lot of the times, but it's an important one to kind of think through. Because this will be something that will continue to change, right? And that's one thing that is constant, is change. So being open to that change and being willing to, you know, have a goal and set out towards that goal and have flexibility towards reaching that goal is really kind of critical, because oftentimes we live in this very black and white world, but the world is really just gray. And so the more we can find that gray, the more you're going to be able to really find that openness to experience, that flexibility towards experience, and hopefully along those way, learn a lot about yourself while also trying to achieve your goals.
For sure, that makes a lot of sense as well.
You know, what can adults do to support you?
Yeah, I definitely feel like, since I also brought up the fact that next year I'm graduating this year, next year's university, there's a lot of uncertainty that comes with it. Not extremely knowing how to navigate that path, feeling like I need to know exactly what I'm majoring in, exactly what I'm doing in the next 12 years to be able to plan out my life and feel like I have a sense of clarity in what I'm doing. So with adults, what would be extremely helpful is just being able to almost reiterate the fact that like you don't have to have it all together right now as well.
Yeah, like personally for me, I've been super stressed out. I'm only in grade 11, but I feel like I have to have my whole life planned out, and they're making us pick our courses for grade 12. And I go to a smaller school. It's only about 500 high school students, and we have 2 student success teachers. One of them is supposed to be in charge of like setting up our classes, and we don't get to have personalized time with her to talk about, okay, how do I even know what courses I'm getting for university stuff? Like, what do I need? We don't have that. It's all up to us, and nobody's told us like how to find things. We have to go to these other resources, right? And you can see like the adults at my school that are supposed to be in charge of this stuff, like they're getting kind of tired. They're trying more to focus on the grade 12s, so the grade 11s don't have the opportunity to do all this planning. And my friends that are in grade 12, they're so stressed out because they didn't have the time to plan. And so then when I come home, it's stressful at home too, because I feel like I'm getting so old, and with the pandemic and stuff, I still feel like I'm 14. So it's really stressful. And I think that what I lack with like adult support is just like Dammy said, like just that reassurance that like, you know what, you'll figure it out. It's okay to not know everything right now. Like, you're still young. And maybe like a little bit more planning, like a little bit more structure. So like more outlets to tell us, okay, what do we do? Someone to guide us, right? Because if we're not getting it at school, we need it somewhere else, right?
Are there times when that structure is not helpful? You know, sometimes I hear young people say, the adults in my life just jump to problem solving. They don't take a minute to just sit and acknowledge that what I'm doing is hard or that what I'm doing is unpleasant. Is there anywhere where you feel like that problem solving is too much?
Yes, I definitely feel like there's that need for balance. I think that's also is what pushes us away from going to adults, because yeah, I agree. Sometimes, you know, I don't really want to know the solution to my problem because I probably already have one. I'm just upset that I even have to make the decision altogether. And I just need that to be validated and that somebody hears me and understands what I'm going through in that context. So I do think that it's a tricky balance, like between them being able to give me the right advice and support and show that they care and love about me, but also being able to be like, yeah, you are going through a little bit of a hard time and I understand and I hear you. Like, that balance is a necessity in my opinion.
It's interesting the way you phrase that, because you didn't say a particular subject. It's like, I don't know, parents, please just figure out when I want help and when I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it feel like that to you sometimes? Like you're not even sure what you're looking for?
Yeah, lots of the time. For myself, lots of the time I would rather be able to come up to a parent and pose the question more than them constantly coming up to me and asking if I'm okay, if I need this and that and that, which I understand too. Like, it's hard because, you know, you want to express your care to your child as well. And there is like that point where it's like, okay, I also don't like it if my mom is not asking me how I am. So I just create a paradox for her as well. But yeah, I would agree. There's a few times where I feel very uncertain about what I want specifically.
Yeah, I agree.
Or do you guys have any ideas of something actually like concrete that adults can do to help you? Something specific that you'd like to see?
Yeah, I think just being able to straight up ask whether, you know, do we need this? Like, do you need to be heard or do you need a solution in this situation? Which will automatically create an effective environment where I'm able to communicate what I feel, or I'm able to communicate what I need, and the parents are able to reciprocate that.
Yeah, I'm seeing nods. I know this is a strategy that I use as a therapist, and I think lots of helping adults can do is, as the conversation is starting, kind of say first, what do you need from me? What do you need from me out of this conversation before the teen starts talking? Would that be helpful, do you think? I'm seeing nods.
Yeah, just like a safe, supportive environment, non-judgmental, just someone to go to. And yeah, I think that's very effective.
Do you ever walk up to a helping adult and say, I need you to solve my problem, please? Like, do you feel like that is something you would feel comfortable saying?
Yeah, sometimes I do that with my parents, but it would be nice if they asked when I come to them, stressed out or, kind of manic, if they could ask that first. It would help me calm down too, right? It gives me a moment to think about, okay, what do I want, right?
Great. Yeah, I think another thing that goes with that for adults that is helpful to remember is we can take a breath when a teen comes up to us. So a lot of times we take on your energy, right? When a teen is stressed, we take on your stress. So another strategy for helping adults is when the teen comes to talk to you, just take a breath before you talk back, right? And that gives you that little bit of a second to ask yourself, okay, wait, ask the teen, what do they need right now?
Also noticed over the past 2 years with the pandemic how much more often my friends are coming to me with their issues, and a lot of the issues are like really heavy things that are really difficult for a teenager to deal with, and like I don't know how to support them. Like a lot of the outlets that we usually have, like our teachers or some of the other programs like stress management or mental health programs are short on staff. And even at school, our student success teacher, he's supposed to be really dealing with course selections and stuff like that, and he's turned into more of like a therapist at our school because we don't have one. And so he's dealing with all of these kids' problems. And I even noticed like some of my peers have his personal phone number to call him after school and stuff. And I can see how like tired out he is. When I first knew him when I was in grade 9, he was always really energetic and really bubbly. And you can see now he's like that, but it's a little bit forced because he's just tired. He's dealing with people's problems constantly all day long, and he doesn't have time to do his actual job. And I don't really know where to go from there with, my friends and, supporting them without jeopardizing my own mental health.
Yeah, I completely hear you and agree with you about the need to be able to some extent be able to give your friends good advice and console them. But I also do feel like there's a point where you and us in general are teenagers and definitely not licensed therapists, to the point where like, yeah, I totally agree that when we have these support systems that are in place in order to implement healthy mindsets and mental health for athlete or for students and stuff, it's really important for them to be able to be accessible so that we aren't having that whole trauma dump on other teenagers, and that causes us to also have more problems on top of the problems that we do have. So in a lot of the cases, I think it's doing a bit less harm than good.
Yeah. So how do we, deal with our friends' mental health without jeopardizing our own?
It's a really tricky thing. And I think adults will probably really relate to this because a lot of us are in the similar position, right? Where we're hearing our friends going through the same traumas that we're going through during the pandemic. One of the things that I think is really important for youth to remember is that you're super resilient. There's so much resilience in youth. And thinking about what you can do to foster and maintain that resilience while you're helping your friends and noticing that your helpers are struggling. Things like journaling your own feelings, right? Setting boundaries. It's okay to say to a friend, I can't talk about this today. Like, I really care about you and I want to help you. I can't talk about this with you today. Having a list of resources like Kids Help Phone or other crisis lines in your area because I think youth have told me sometimes it's really hard to tell a friend I can't talk right now. It feels like a lot of pressure, like you're letting, you're abandoning your friend. So having those additional resources handy that you find helpful to share with your friends. It's interesting that you're noticing that adults are struggling, and I think we should maybe talk about that next of what adults can do to be resilient themselves. But a big part with teens in maintaining your own mental health is making sure you take time to foster your resilience, leaning on your support systems, hopefully having more than one. So if mom or dad can't talk today, then you talk to your teacher. Or if you notice the success teacher is looking really stressed out, you go knock on the principal's door. Connecting with lots of adults in your life who may be able to help. They may be your second or third choice, but it's better than taking on all of that stress by yourself.
I completely agree with even the need to have more than one is really important. Like for me, it would be the opposite to Jada's experience, but I wish that we had this implemented in a lot more schools where if I'm not able to talk to my counselor, I do have another person like the teacher chaplain that I'm able to talk to as well. And having that diversity of people you talk to and even just getting different opinions about your situation is a good resource to have. And I do wish that for lots of basically every teenager in the same shoes as us as well.
And we will have talked a little bit in this seminar about teenagers feel their emotions more intensely than adults. And so I think part of that resilience and boundary setting helps you as well, because when your friends are telling you their problems, it's going to feel really intense. It's going to feel overwhelming just based on the way your brains are wired. So bringing in that additional help, having some resources, setting some boundaries helps you guys to keep your resilience as well, to not have your emotional batteries drained. Seems like kind of a nice way to transition into talking about what professionals need to do to take care of themselves. So maybe I'll slide into that if that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Sounds good. Okay. One of the things I think we as helping professionals sometimes struggle with is taking time to take care of ourselves, setting our own boundaries. I'm hearing about this teacher that's giving his personal number for kids to call after school. Like that's definitely something that helping professionals like to do. And so I hope that, everyone that's attending today can take a couple minutes and create a self-care plan. What's your self-care as a helping professional that you're going to do to keep your emotional battery charged, whether it's joining a yoga class, journaling, gratitude journal, a date with your spouse or partner, connecting with a trusted peer, talking to another teacher or counselor or therapist about how you're struggling. Things like put your self-care plan in writing and have a self-care buddy, somebody that you check in with that can ask you, hey, did you go to that yoga class that you said you were going to go to? I don't know, you guys sound like pretty resilient teens. What would you add to that list?
I think like just little things for yourself, like taking yourself out for dinner or having a bath, doing things that you like exploring yourself. I know that I'm young, but that's really helped me when I'm feeling, unsure about my life or down. It's really nice to just kind of connect with myself and do some self-love and, mindfulness activities. Awesome.
Do you have a favorite?
Loving kindness. That is 10 out of 10 the best one there is.
Sure.
Oh, I completely agree with that. Being able to be aware of yourself, like self-awareness, to be able to have self-love and be able to implement these things in your daily routine. I feel like it's also important to not wait till you get to burnout. So that's when I'm like, okay, that's when I'll do journaling. But if we're able to implement this in everything we do, and every morning, I don't know, you might have your gratitude journal. I love doing that. Breath work, being able to center a lot is super important on even just setting the tone for my day or finishing my day off with a nice tone as well, like journaling, yoga, meditation, all of that stuff. Love it.
I think I might add to the list exercise. We talked a lot about quiet activities, but sometimes you just need to run it out when you're really stressed.
Yeah, I go on angry bike rides. Angrily bike ride through the subdivision.
I love that.
Yeah, that's kind of awesome. Yeah, that is really cool. Do you feel like the helpers in your life, teachers, counselors, principals, do you notice them modeling some of these things at school, or let's see, head shakes?
Very rarely. Like I can probably only name a handful of adults that I know that even talk about self-care or, do things for themselves.
Yeah. And I think that's where we're able to completely see through when they give us advice. Yeah, journal. And I'm like, you don't journal either. So why would I do it? So we can definitely see in them what, like, there's no mask that's really showing us that, like, no, we actually do what we say we're doing. But I think it's important to be able to have the accountability to say that I do this too, and I'm able to educate these people around it as well. I think on my level, I think there's a good balance. There's some people that I know do it, and there's others that don't do it. But the people who do it are the ones I get advice from, and I'm closer with, and I would inevitably have a little bit more respect for, because I feel like I can relate to them on that level. The ones here that don't really do it as much, it's hard to relate with them, and I feel like I can't really have that same respect that I have for the people on the other end of the spectrum that follow through with what they tell me to say, that they also do.
I really appreciate you being brave enough to say it just out that way, Demi, because I think that's the part adults struggle with, right? That self-care is not just about taking care of ourselves. We're setting an example for the youth, and that you guys are watching. Like, you are noticing when we tell you to do something that we're not actually doing for ourselves. So even if it's a case of like, create a self-care plan and do it just because kids are watching, you'll get a benefit out of that for sure. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. We are 2 years almost to the day into this pandemic, and I'm sure there's been a lot of things that have been missed in the last 2 years. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so for me, like, it all started out with me missing out on a student exchange at school. Like, we had it all set up. I was going to go to Nunavut, and like they pulled it that March break, that everything got shut down. And I know all of us were really excited for that. And then it kept progressing, like as we kept having to do lockdowns and stuff like that. I'm in Army Cadets, and so we had the opportunity to go to summer camps. I got accepted to go to the Rocky Mountains for 6 weeks. And like we cycle through programs where you're going like horseback riding through the mountains, glacier climbing, canoeing, whitewater rafting, all of that really cool stuff that it's really only offered to the cadets. Like, you can't do it as a civilian. And I've missed out on that 2 years in a row that I got accepted to it. And it's been really difficult. I know even with like my peers who've missed out on sports or things that like you only get to do at this age. And it's just really sad. Like it breaks my heart. Like, I'm getting older now. I'm going to age out of the cadet program. I'm going to graduate high school, and those opportunities are never going to come again.
I'm seeing like Demi totally nodding along with what you're saying. I guess I'm wondering, and I want to hear about you, Demi, but I'm totally wondering too, like, how much notice do they give you guys that you're going to miss out on these things?
Barely any. Like, I was set up to leave for that camp to the Rocky Mountains, and I was like notified less than a month in advance that they were like, okay, no, there's actually going to be too many restrictions, and we're not going to be able to fly you guys over there.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, not having that time to even prepare and be like, oh, wait, never mind, this isn't happening. Like, I completely agree. As an athlete, I've missed a lot of opportunities with like nationals or like camps that you do to improve your athletic ability. And like, Jada's right. We're only this age for the amount of time we're only this age. And I'm never going to be able to go back and be 15 going to nationals. And I never got to do it either. And I am graduating in like 3 months. And a lot of the things that lots of the seniors are also saying are like, I feel like I was in high school for a year and a half. So even that whole high school experience that you are so excited for in grade 8 didn't really happen altogether. And now it's kind of like I'm thrown into college and somehow working towards a career where I feel like I haven't even been a teenager, but I'm turning 18 in a few months.
I wonder, because I mean, everybody missed things. So I wonder, do you feel like the adults in your life got how uniquely challenging this is for teens?
No, like I know with my mom, she was like, "Oh, it's okay. I'll take you to the BC myself." I was like, "Yeah, like I love you, mom, but it's completely different. Like the environment of being with people your own age and like on your own and that kind of stuff, or it's hard for adults to grasp that, right? And I know like that my mom just means the best, but it's not the same. It's just sad."
Yeah, no, I for sure agree with that. The tendency, or a lot of the time, was everybody's going through something, and we're like, okay, that doesn't really change the fact that um, we are missing that time of our lives, and the older people don't have something significant to relate to that, especially being like, yeah, back when I was 15 years old, COVID happened too. I remember. It's not like that. Like we're going through something that's uniquely tailored to our generation and will have an impact on us even to go to our next generations as well. So as we progress through our like lives as well. So I don't think that they took it to the degree which I wish it was taken to, where social media and FaceTime and all that stuff replaced like that interaction. But I don't think that it could ever really replace human interaction. And I think that wasn't extremely supported as much as I wish it was.
I think that's a part that's hard for adults is, we forget the importance of validating your experience first before we jump to the positive, think positive, look on the bright side, right? Like it's important, I think, for us as helpers, and I'd love to hear what you guys think, to take a minute and let you have like, yeah, this is hard. This is something that no one else is going through. This is very disappointing. It makes sense that this is so hard for you, right? That how you feel, and it makes sense that you feel that way, and then kind of transition to the positive thought. But I think sometimes that's hard for adults.
Yeah, I personally feel like the adults in my life, like they just want the best for me. So they want me to think positively and they want me to, okay, you know what, move on from it, like find other things. And I haven't really had that support to take the time and be like, okay, I am so bummed out. Like missing these things sucks for me and I'm not going to be able to get that back. It hasn't really been like that at all.
Yeah, I completely agree with that as well. I think that they 100% do care and they're trying to instill resiliency in us, but a part of it is also being able to accept what happened to be able to move past it. Because a lot of it was, yeah, okay, fine, we'll be happy, and then you'll be really upset, and then you'll go back to being really happy because you haven't came to terms with what happened, really, in my opinion.
And because you're teenagers and that's the way your brain works, right? You feel your emotions really intensely and they go up and they go down. And I wonder too about if adults going through the same thing as you guys made that a bit hard too, because they're also going on that roller coaster of their feelings going up and down.
What's been helpful, or what has helped motivate you guys in terms of thinking positively or more positively in your situation, given the missed opportunities that has happened over the last 2 years?
Well, I definitely feel like there's some positives that came out of it, and focusing on those has definitely helped. For instance, I did have a time where I wasn't going to school and I was at home by myself, and it was an amazing time to have some form of like self-growth and development, like to some level enlightenment, that I was able to discover this part of myself that goes, yeah, beyond like school, track, whatever I'm doing. And yeah, the progression that it let me have in my inner self helps me to find a positive thing out of COVID and the pandemic, and also just knowing that that's something that's I'm going to be able to carry with me for the rest of my life. Unlike the things I might have missed, it definitely is something that's a positive for me when I'm thinking about COVID in general.
I definitely had the exact same experience as Dammy. I went through this whole, like reinventing myself in a more positive way. I switched my mindset completely to think more positively. I started focusing in on my mental health, and I just all around got so much time with myself, and like so much self growth. It's amazing when I look back and reflect on it. It makes me feel great. It makes me feel really awesome. I try to focus on that a lot too. I also think just taking it day by day. When I'm sad, I let myself be sad about what I've missed out on, because it really does suck. And even if, some of the adults in my life don't give me that opportunity to be sad, I make that time for myself. And when I'm thinking of like in a bit more of a better mindset, I also try to think about, okay, like what comes next? Like, what am I gonna get to do after this? And so I'll take my time to like, plan a special trip with my friends and be like, okay, this is something that we're going to do when, we can, or, just thinking forward, not getting stuck in the same spot, which I find with a lot of my peers that's happened because maybe they didn't have, the same experience as me and Dammy with the, personal growth. They sort of got stuck in the same mindset. And so it's really important to just keep looking forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think both of you have done a wonderful job in that, accepting that this has been really, really hard and there's a lot of pain in those missed opportunities. And, there's a lot of learning, a lot of growth, and a lot of, great memorable moments within the last 2 years that you can also kind of focus on. And really, I love the idea of thinking about, okay, change is always constant. And what does the future hold for you? And there are a lot of great things on the horizon that you're already talking about and planning around, which I think is a really amazing thing that you guys are doing.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like even just having those newfound like values or resilience is so nice because I think on a whole big term, we're able to now value things like seeing people in person that we definitely took advantage of before COVID. So yeah, definitely being able to see the value of life more as well.
The
the
value of
connections.
time. The value
Yeah.
of time, like, my interpersonal relationships, like my connections, they need to be stronger, and I need to, live every day at like the best that I can. And, that also means going up and down with my emotions, which is valid.
Mhm.
But, just making the most of it, because it might not always, we might get put into another lockdown. So just being positive.
Yeah.
And that's amazingly mindful too. Just trying to live in the present and the present day and doing one thing at a time, which is a really powerful thing to do because we can get lost in the future-oriented thinking, which only causes more stress. But bringing it back to live here in that present moment, I think is really outstanding.
So thanks to the team for their great conversation. I'm also going to share Joelle's perspective. She wasn't able to be part of the larger conversation, but she had a beautiful summary of everything we've discussed today.
When it comes to adults supporting and helping teens manage stress, school, and other difficult things in life, the most important thing is trust. There needs to be a mutual trust between teens and adults so that they can set boundaries and support one another. Teens deal with a lot of stress on a daily basis, and when their parents or counselors, whoever it is, are their support, they need to know when to support them, but also when to give them space. Especially with COVID, there have been a lot of missed opportunities for teens, such as grad trips, socializing with friends, sports, most of the high school experience altogether, and so much more. So when adults are their support, they need to be there to listen to them instead of, brushing off those emotions and making them feel like their emotions are not valid. I think that the best way for adults to support teens is just to be there, to listen to them and try and understand what they're going through instead of brushing it off. And I think that, again, trust is the number one thing. And without that trust, you can't really have the support that teens need. When it comes
So again, thanks to everybody for the great conversation. Now we turn it to you all who are joining us here today for any questions you may have. So one we can start with is how we can balance trying to support youth while also trying to make sure we're not making things worse as we, worry for them.
Sure. Did you want to take down the slide or
Mhm.
are we okay? I'm not sure what folks are seeing.
Yeah, there we go.
So how do we balance supporting youth without making it worse? Was that the question?
Yeah.
I think that adults often worry that we're going to make it worse. Whereas one of the things we know about adolescent development is that they tend to be very self-focused. We like to say sometimes that teenagers live in their own spotlight. They're very aware of what's going on for themselves. So any sort of validation that their experience is normal, I hate that word, but typical for what's going on, makes sense for the situation, is something that can be managed and supported by adults in their life. Starting there and talking about it from that perspective often helps teens to feel grounded and normalized without making it worse. Talking about it is helpful for most teens. Broaching a subject doesn't necessarily make it worse. With the teens that I work with, sometimes they will say like, "Oh, I can't talk about this, it's stressing me out." But then once you kind of come from it, like, it makes sense that you're stressed. This is really stressful. Of course, talking about it is going to be stressful, and we can still talk about it. I'm here for you. We'll take it at your pace. Then you tend to not make it worse, in my experience.
Awesome, thanks. And how can we promote a culture of resiliency for youth in schools or in other environments?
I think right now the biggest thing is modeling it and creating opportunities for that to happen. So particularly in schools, if there's time to carve out in a classroom setting, hey everybody, we're going to journal for 5 minutes today. Try this new thing. Watching a video, if there's access to that kind of projection in school of there's the 3-minute breathing space that's on YouTube that you can quickly pull up, and it just encourages everybody to sit calmly and breathe. 2 seconds to talk to a peer to support each other. I think the main thing with schools is modeling, taking that time to do things while you're feeling the stress.
And what are some signs that parents and caregivers and professionals can look for to kind of get a sense that the youth in their lives are feeling stress to move towards that conversation?
This one is particularly tricky with adolescents. I work with little kids all the way up to adolescents. Little kids will show you that they're stressed in their behavior. Teenagers also show you in their behavior, but you have to look for the clues. So things like changes in sleep, up all night, sleeping all day, more cranky than usual. Teenagers can often be moody, but more cranky than usual is a sign that they're stressed. Changes in appetite. So if you had a teen that was a voracious eater, now they're not eating, or vice versa, that's often a sign of stress in teens. Not wanting to spend time with their friends or not wanting to do things that were fun before is often a sign of stress in teens. If we think about stress as a response to a time limited event or something that's happening, I think we can even think of ways as adults that we manifest stress, right? If you know that you've got your review with your boss coming up, or there's a big presentation you have to finish, you might be reaching for the junk food more than those healthy snacks. You'll see that in teens as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And what are some strategies we can use to address that and support the teens with their stress?
We've talked about it a lot today. I would say validation is a big one. Teens are often put off by the worry that if they speak to an adult, they'll be asked a lot of questions. So if I approach a helping adult and say, I'm stressed, well, why? What's going on? What's happening? What'd you do? Who'd you talk to? A lot of teens find it helpful if they can approach an adult and the adult doesn't immediately ask a million questions and is just there. Side-by-side activities, go for a walk, go for a drive, sit and color with your teen, offer to play sports or video games. A lot of times that creates space for teens to talk without the 20 questions that they often are worried about if they're going to approach a helping professional.
Yeah, I really like that actually, just that idea of being there with them and giving them the opportunity to talk. I think sometimes we forget that maybe they just need a minute to work up to it rather than just jumping in and, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? Blah, 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 you know?
Definitely. With a lot of the teens that I work with, when I say, would you approach an adult? It's like, they're going to ask me a million questions. One of the strategies I use with kids that I work with in therapy is the code word strategy. So I'm really stressed. I want mom and dad to know that I'm stressed, but I don't want to have to say what's going on or answer a bunch of questions. So we develop a code word. If I come up to mom and dad and I say pineapples, that just means sit with me, do an activity, be around, check on me. Don't ask me a lot of questions, but be nearby. And teens tend to like that. Makes it easier to say it without saying it.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Regis. I am mindful of the time, and we do have another resource to share with everybody. So thank you again for your time and expertise. Thanks to the youth on our panel. Thank you to Dr. Saxton. It was a wonderful conversation. It's awesome to hear the perspective of these young people. They're so articulate and sharing what they need, and I think we could definitely take our learnings moving forward.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. And like I had mentioned, I can share we have a resource to support teens. We have our Zen Garden app that is designed using our stress lessons program as a supplementary support for youth. And you get to hear from one of the young people who took part in developing this app.
Hello, I am Wura and I was a contributor towards the Zen Garden app. The process of creating and forming ideas towards this app was a fun and engaging one. I, as well as students all over Canada, came together to brainstorm ideas for this app. There were several activities that we did that got my attention, like when we were selecting color palettes and doing stress coping exercises. My favorite thing about the app is the fact that it's personalizable. I can pick the colors and hairstyles of my avatar, and I can include my personal method of coping with stress. The journaling aspect is also nice because sometimes I need to let things like feelings go, and the prompt giving gives a perfect way of starting. This app has been very beneficial, especially since it's my last year of high school, which has been really stressful with scholarships, admissions, and the feeling of it being my final year. All my favorite strategies that I use to calm myself down or to relax I found on the app. I personally use the 4-7-8 breathing method and a good old cardio workout. An important thing that I've learned from using this app is that stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be useful. Stress is what makes us feel energized, alert, and engaged in life and its challenges. That being said, stress also protects us. Whenever our body feels as if it's in danger, the body releases cortisol, the stress hormone, which keeps us alert until the threat passes. But as we know, too much of everything is bad, hence the reason why stress can lead to acne. Working with Strong Mind, Strong Kids for Psychology Canada has been a great experience all around for me. I plan to join in all future initiatives available to me.
Yeah, so if you're interested in that, then to share that resource with the youth in your life, feel free to check it out on our website under the resources tab. And last but definitely not least, we'd like to thank RBC for their support in this wellness webinar. Thank you all for attending today. Thanks again to the panel for their great discussion, and have a great day.
Here's an idea. RBC is investing $500 million over 10 years. And Sarah, Ben, Yuki, Samir, and millions of young people just like you, so you'll have the skills, connections, work experience, and mental well-being support for the jobs of today and tomorrow. RBC Future Launch. empowering youth for the jobs of today and tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this wellness webinar. Please feel free to share your feedback in the survey that I will be adding into the chat right now. You'll also receive the recording and the survey link as well in a follow-up email. Thanks again and have a great day.